The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched for nearly a mile. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform where speakers addressed the gathered representatives. Light from artificial stars floated near the ceiling, casting a soft glow over the faces of 100 different species. Today, like so many days before, they were talking about death. The Thex Dominion has completed its conquest of Velnus Prime, announced the assembly speaker, a tall being with gray skin and 6 eyes. His voice carried no emotion. He had made similar announcements many times. Estimated civilian casualties stand at 2 million. An additional 8 million have been taken as forced laborers. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some representatives lowered their heads. Others whispered angrily to their neighbors. A few simply stared at nothing, their expressions empty. Ambassador Yellen Vasquez sat in the human delegation's small section near the back of the hall. She was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many of these sessions. She wore a simple black suit, the same as always. No medals, no symbols of rank, nothing to draw attention. She had been humanity's voice in this assembly for 15 years. In all that time, she had never raised her hand to vote, never committed human forces to any conflict, never promised anything beyond continued observation. The other species had stopped expecting anything from humanity long ago. "The assembly must respond," shouted a representative from the Velnus system, his blue feathers shaking with rage. "Our world burns. Our people are in chains. And what do? You talk. You debate. You do nothing." The speaker raised a hand for calm. "The assembly recognizes your pain. However, direct military action against the Thex Dominion would require courage you do not have," the Velnus representative spat. He turned and stormed out of the hall. No one tried to stop him. Vasquez watched him go. She had seen this scene play out dozens of times. Different species, different conquered worlds, the same helpless anger, the same empty response from the assembly. The Thex Dominion had been conquering worlds for 30 years. They were a warrior species, evolved from predators on a harsh desert world. Their culture worshipped strength and despised weakness. To them, conquest was not just acceptable, it was the natural order. The strong took what they wanted. The weak existed to serve. They had never lost a war. Their fleet numbered in the thousands. Their soldiers were brutal and efficient. And the Galactic Assembly, for all its grand speeches about peace and cooperation, had never found the will to stop them. After the session ended, Vasquez walked through the station's corridors toward her office. She passed diplomats and officials from a dozen species, most of whom ignored her completely. Humanity was a minor power in galactic politics, a young species with limited territory and no visible military strength. They had joined the assembly 40 years ago and had contributed almost nothing since. That was exactly how humanity wanted it. Vasquez entered her office and locked the door behind her. She sat at her desk and activated a secure communication channel, one that did not officially exist. "Report," she said. A man's face appeared on her screen. He wore a military uniform with no markings, and his expression was stone. "The Thex Dominion has announced their next target," he said. "Sanctuary 7. Vasquez closed her eyes for a moment. She had feared this day would come. Sanctuary 7 was not like other worlds. It had been established as a refuge for survivors of Thex conquest, a place where the broken remains of destroyed civilizations could find safety. 12 different species had made it their home. They had built cities together, shared their cultures, and tried to heal from the trauma of losing everything. The planet also hosted a human medical mission, 300 doctors and nurses, providing care to refugees who had nowhere else to turn. "How long until the Thex fleet arrives?" Vasquez asked. 6 weeks. "Have they issued demands?" "Unconditional surrender. All refugees to be processed for labor allocation. Any resistance will be met with orbital bombardment." Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question she had been avoiding for 30 years. "Is the Blackstar ready?" The man on the screen nodded slowly. "It has been ready since the day it was built, waiting for your order." "Not my order," Vasquez said. "The Council's order. I will speak with them tonight." She ended the communication and sat alone in the darkness of her office. Through the window, she could see the curve of the station and, beyond it, the endless stars. Somewhere out there, millions of people were praying for salvation that they believed would never come. They were wrong. 2 days later, Overlord Krathen of the Thex Dominion broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. He was massive even by Thex standards, 8 feet tall, with scaled skin the color of dried blood and eyes like burning coals. He sat on a throne made from the bones of conquered enemies, surrounded by his most loyal generals. "Citizens of the galaxy," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, "I have heard your protests. I have listened to your pathetic assembly debate and whine about justice and rights. It amuses me." He leaned forward, his lipless mouth twisting into something like a smile. "Let me be clear. The strong rule. The weak serve. This is the only law that matters. Your assembly cannot stop us. Your fleets are nothing compared to ours. And your words," he laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass, "your words are less than nothing." He held up a data tablet showing the location of Sanctuary 7. "In 6 weeks, I will personally lead my fleet to this world of refugees. I will watch as they are processed for service to the Dominion. And anyone who tries to stop me will learn what happens to those who challenge Thex supremacy." He crushed the tablet in his massive hand. "This is not a threat. This is a promise. Broadcast over." The message ended, but its effects rippled across the galaxy. On 100 worlds, people watched in despair. The assembly called emergency sessions that accomplished nothing. Military commanders calculated the odds and found them hopeless. On Sanctuary 7, refugees held their children close and prayed to gods who had not saved them before. And in the Galactic Assembly, Ambassador Vasquez requested permission to address the chamber. She walked to the central platform, looking small and old under the artificial stars. Thousands of eyes watched her with a mixture of curiosity and pity. What could humanity possibly say that would matter? "Fellow representatives," Vasquez began, her voice calm and steady, "I have heard the Overlord's message, I have watched your reactions, and I have a statement to make on behalf of the United Human Federation." She paused, looking around the vast hall. "Humanity does not intervene in conflicts between other species. This has been our policy since we joined this assembly, and it remains our policy today." Angry shouts erupted from several delegations. Someone called her a coward. Vasquez waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "However, Sanctuary 7 hosts 300 human medical personnel. They are there by choice, providing care to those in need. They will not be withdrawn." The chamber fell silent. "If the Thex Dominion proceeds with its invasion," Vasquez continued, "and if any harm comes to our citizens, humanity will respond. I say this not as a threat, but as a simple statement of fact. If you threaten humans, we will respond." A Thex diplomat in the audience laughed loudly. "Respond with what? You have no fleet, no army. You are nothing but a minor species pretending to matter." Vasquez turned to face him directly. Her expression did not change. "I have delivered humanity's message. What happens next is not up to me." She left the platform and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, chaos erupted as species demanded to know what humanity meant. But Vasquez did not look back. That night, a coded transmission was sent from the assembly station to a location that appeared on no map. It consisted of only 3 words: "Wake the Blackstar." Deep in the darkness of human space, in a shipyard hidden inside a hollowed-out moon, lights began to flicker on for the first time in decades. Machines that had waited in cold silence started to hum. Screens displayed readiness reports that had been prepared 20 years ago. And in the heart of the facility, something massive began to wake. The crew members who would serve aboard her had never seen actual combat. Neither had the ship. She had been built as a promise that humanity would never be helpless, never be conquered, never watch the innocent suffer while doing nothing. For 30 years, that promise had slept in the dark. Now, finally, it was time to keep it. Captain Miriam Cole received her orders in her quarters on a distant station. She read them 3 times to make sure she understood. Then she began packing her bag. She had spent 20 years preparing for a mission she hoped would never come. Training crews, running simulations, keeping the Blackstar ready for a day that might never arrive. The day had arrived. She thought about the refugees on Sanctuary 7, the children who had already lost everything, the survivors who had finally found a place to call home, only to face destruction again. She thought about Overlord Krathen and his throne of bones, and she thought about what the Blackstar would do when it reached the Kavari expanse. Captain Cole finished packing and walked to the door. Before she left, she looked back at her quarters, at the books on her shelf, the pictures on her wall, the small comforts she had collected over 60 years of life. She wondered if she would ever see them again. Then she stepped through the door and began her journey toward war. The shuttle approached the moon slowly, following a route that twisted through asteroid fields and sensor dead zones. Lieutenant David Chen sat at the controls, watching his navigation screen with growing unease. He had served in the human fleet for 15 years. He had seen classified facilities before, but nothing had prepared him for this. The moon looked dead, just another chunk of rock drifting through empty space. No lights, no signals, no indication that anything existed inside. But as the shuttle drew closer, a section of the surface began to move. Massive doors, hidden beneath layers of dust and stone, slid apart to reveal a passage into darkness. Chen guided the shuttle inside. The doors closed behind him, sealing out the stars. Lights flickered on along the passage walls, leading him deeper into the moon's hollow core. He passed through 3 security checkpoints, each one scanning his shuttle with technology he did not recognize. Finally, he emerged into a vast underground chamber, and there she was. The USS Blackstar floated in the center of the chamber, held in place by docking clamps the size of buildings. Chen had seen the classified files. He had studied the specifications. But seeing her in person was something else entirely. She was not large, smaller than most cruisers, barely 300 meters from bow to stern. Her hull was black, so black that it seemed to absorb the light around it. No markings, no windows, no visible weapons. Just smooth, dark curves that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. Something about the ship felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, just wrong. Like looking at an animal that should not exist. Like seeing something that broke the rules of the universe simply by being there. Chen docked his shuttle and walked through the airlock into the Blackstar's quarters. The inside was as dark as the outside. Black walls, black floors, black ceilings. The only light came from thin strips along the edges of the passages, glowing a soft blue. He found his way to the bridge where a dozen other crew members had already gathered. They stood in silence looking at the command stations, the display screens, the captain's chair at the center of it all. None of them spoke. There was nothing to say. Captain Miriam Cole arrived an hour later. She walked onto the bridge without ceremony, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She was 60 years old with short gray hair and a face lined by decades of service. Her uniform was simple. No medals, no ribbons, nothing to indicate that she commanded the most powerful weapon humanity had ever built. She looked at her crew. 12 people. That was all the Blackstar needed. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "You're thinking this is a dream, that you'll wake up tomorrow and find out this was all a simulation." She walked to the center of the bridge and stood before the main display screen. "It's not a dream. It's not a simulation. We have received deployment orders for the first time in the Blackstar's history. We are going to war." She touched the screen, and a star map appeared. A red dot marked the location of Sanctuary 7. A cluster of green dots showed the position of the Thex invasion fleet. 400 warship, Cole said, the largest Thex fleet ever assembled. They plan to reach Sanctuary 7 in 5 weeks and begin their conquest. We will arrive in 3. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, the ship's executive officer, raised her hand. "Captain, what are our rules of engagement?" Cole's expression did not change. "We will position ourselves between the Thex fleet and Sanctuary 7. We will broadcast one warning, giving them 1 hour to withdraw. If they refuse, we will engage. And if they accept," Park asked, "then we escort them out of the system and return to base. No shots fired, no casualties. That is the outcome we should all hope for." She looked around the bridge, meeting each crew member's eyes in turn. "I want to be clear about something. The Blackstar was built to be a deterrent, a weapon so powerful that no one would ever dare to challenge us. For 30 years it worked. No one knew we existed, but we were always here waiting, ready, hoping we would never be needed. She paused. We were needed. The Thex Dominion has made its choice. Now we must make ours. We will follow protocol. We will offer mercy. But if that mercy is rejected, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Begin pre-flight checks, Cole ordered. We launch in 6 hours. The crew worked through the night, running diagnostics on systems that had been dormant for years. Chen sat at the weapons console, scrolling through targeting data that made his head spin. The Blackstar's weapons were unlike anything in the known galaxy. Energy projectors that could disable a ship's power systems without destroying it. Shield disruptors that collapsed defensive barriers in seconds. Boarding drones carrying non-lethal countermeasures. And other things. Things with classified names and classified purposes that Chen was not authorized to understand. The ship had never been tested in real combat. It had never fired its weapons at an actual enemy. Everything they knew about its capabilities came from simulations and calculations. But those simulations showed something remarkable. In every scenario, every test, every theoretical battle, the Blackstar won. Not by a small margin, by an impossible margin. The ship could engage entire fleets and emerge without a scratch. It could fight for days without rest. It could do things that the laws of physics said should be impossible. Because the Blackstar did not follow the laws of physics as other species understood them. Humanity had been exploring the galaxy for less than a century. They had encountered dozens of advanced civilizations, each with their own technologies and achievements. But humanity had something none of them had discovered. 60 years ago, a human research team had found something in the depths of space, an artifact, ancient beyond measurement, containing knowledge that no living species possessed. The artifact had been studied in secret, its contents translated and analyzed over decades of careful work. The Blackstar was the result. It used principles that other species had not discovered and might never discover. Its engines bent space in ways that should be impossible. Its shields absorbed energy through methods that defied conventional physics. Its weapons operated on frequencies that no known sensor could detect. The ship was not merely advanced. It was a leap forward of thousands of years, maybe more, and humanity had kept it hidden, waiting, hoping. Captain Cole sat alone in her quarters, reading through mission briefings that she already knew by heart. On her desk sat a photograph of her daughter, taken 20 years ago at a graduation ceremony. Her daughter was a doctor now, working on a colony world far from the coming conflict. Cole wondered if she would ever see her again. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She put down the briefing and called, "Enter!" Lieutenant Commander Park stepped inside. She was 35 with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor that had made her invaluable during years of training exercises. "Captain, the crew is asking questions," Park said. "They want to know what happens if the Thex don't withdraw." Cole gestured for her to sit. "What do you think happens?" Park hesitated. "I've seen the simulations. I know what the Blackstar can do, but simulations and reality are different things. 400 warships, millions of Thex soldiers. Are we really supposed to fight all of them with 12 people in one ship?" "We're not going to fight them," Cole said. Park frowned. "Captain, fighting implies a contest, two sides struggling for victory. What the Blackstar does is not fighting." Cole leaned back in her chair. "Do you know why I was chosen to command this ship?" "Because you're the best captain in the fleet." Cole smiled slightly. "No, there are plenty of officers with better tactical records, better instincts, better skills. I was chosen because I understand what the Blackstar really is." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the walls of the underground chamber stretched into darkness. This ship is not a weapon of war. It's a weapon of peace. It exists so that war becomes unthinkable, so that anyone who considers attacking humanity, or anyone under humanity's protection, knows that the cost will be absolute. She turned to face Park. "The Thex Dominion has conquered worlds for 30 years because no one could stop them. Tomorrow they will learn that someone can, and when they learn that, they will have a choice. Surrender or be destroyed, not destroyed as in killed, destroyed as in broken, helpless, unable to threaten anyone ever again. And if they choose to fight anyway, Cole's expression grew heavy, then we will break them, every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We will leave them with nothing but their lives and the memory of what happens when you challenge humanity. Park was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Do you think they'll surrender?" "Honestly, no. The Theks worship strength. They will see our warning as a bluff. They will attack, convinced that one small ship cannot possibly defeat their armada." Cole returned to her seat. "They will be wrong, and 400 crews will learn that lesson the hard way." "It seems cruel," Park said softly, "to know what's coming and not be able to stop it." Cole nodded. "It is cruel. That's why we offer the warning. That's why we give them an hour to make the right choice. Because once that hour ends, there is no going back. No mercy, no second chances." She picked up her daughter's photograph and looked at it for a long moment. "I have spent 20 years preparing for this mission. 20 years hoping it would never come. 20 years knowing that if it did come, I would have to do something terrible. Not evil, terrible. There's a difference." She set the photograph down. "The Theks Dominion has enslaved millions, murdered millions more. They have built an empire on suffering and called it strength. Tomorrow that empire ends. And yes, the ending will be cruel. But sometimes cruelty is necessary to prevent greater cruelty." Park stood. "I understand, Captain. The crew will be ready." "I know they will," Cole said. Dismissed. 6 hours later, the Blackstar launched. The great doors of the underground chamber opened, and the ship rose from its resting place like a shadow gaining form. It cleared the moon's surface and turned toward the distant stars. For 30 years, it had waited in darkness. Now, finally, it flew toward the light. Across the galaxy, intelligence agencies detected an unknown energy signature, traveling at impossible speed. They ran analysis after analysis, trying to identify the vessel. Nothing matched. Nothing came close. The Theks Dominion scouts sent panicked reports to their commanders. Something was coming. Something they could not identify or understand. Something that moved faster than any ship in the known galaxy. Overlord Krathun received these reports in his throne room. Waiter, he listened to his admirals describe the unknown vessel, their voices tight with something that might have been fear. Then he laughed. "One ship," he said. "The humans send one ship against my fleet. Is this supposed to frighten me?" "Overlord," one admiral ventured, "our scouts cannot identify the vessel's technology. Its speed exceeds all known capabilities. Perhaps we should..." "Should what? Run? Hide?" Krathun's eyes blazed with contempt. "The Theks do not run. The Theks do not hide. If the humans wish to sacrifice one ship, we will grant them that wish. And when their vessel is burning debris, the galaxy will see that no one can challenge us." He waved his hand dismissively. "Continue toward Sanctuary 7. Maintain formation. When the human ship arrives, destroy it." The admirals bowed and left to carry out his orders. In the darkness of space, the Blackstar flew on, and on its bridge, Captain Cole watched the stars pass by, counting the hours until humanity's promise would finally be kept. The planet Sanctuary 7 hung in space like a blue and green jewel. Clouds drifted across its surface. Lights from cities sparkled on its night side. 12 species had built their homes there, creating a world of hope from the ruins of their conquered civilizations. Now 400 Theks warships surrounded it like predators circling wounded prey. Overlord Krathun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror's Fury, watching the planet rotate slowly below him. In a few hours, his forces would begin their descent. The refugees would be sorted, categorized, and assigned to labor camps across the Dominion. Another world would fall. Another species, 12 species, this time, would learn their place in the natural order. He smiled at the thought. "Overlord," his sensor officer announced, "we are detecting an incoming vessel. Unknown configuration. It will arrive in approximately 3 minutes." Krathun turned away from the window. "The human ship." "Yes, Overlord. It matches the energy signature our scouts detected." "Good. I was beginning to think they had changed their minds." He settled into his command throne, claws tapping against the armrests. "Order all ships to target the vessel the moment it arrives. Maximum firepower. I want it reduced to dust before its crew can send a final message. The order went out across the fleet. 400 warships adjusted their positions, weapons charging, crews preparing for the brief engagement ahead. 3 minutes passed, space twisted. The Blackstar emerged from faster-than-light travel with a flash of light that briefly outshone the local sun. It came to a stop directly between the Thex fleet and Sanctuary 7, floating motionless against the stars. Every sensor in the Thex fleet locked onto it instantly. Targeting computers calculated firing solutions. Weapons prepared to unleash destruction. But no one fired, because now, for the first time, they could see the ship clearly. And what they saw made no sense. The Blackstar was small, barely a tenth the size of the Conqueror's Fury. Its hull was black, darker than space itself, absorbing light in ways that hurt the eyes. No visible weapons, no visible engines, no visible anything. Just darkness, shaped like a ship. "What is that thing?" one of Crathon's admirals whispered. Before anyone could answer, the Blackstar spoke. "Attention! Thex Dominion Fleet." The voice was calm, female, completely without fear. "This is Captain Miriam Cole of the USS Blackstar, representing the United Human Federation. You have entered space containing human citizens. You are ordered to withdraw immediately." Crathon laughed. The sound echoed through his bridge. "Is this a joke? You send one ship, one tiny pathetic ship, and expect us to run? You have 1 hour to comply with this order," the voice continued. "During that hour, you may power down your weapons, reverse course, and leave this system without consequence. This is the only warning you will receive." The Overlord leaned forward in his throne. "And if we refuse?" There was a pause, then. "If you refuse, we will respond. There will be no further negotiation, no mercy, no retreat. You have 1 hour." The transmission ended. For a moment, the Thex bridge was silent. Then Crathon began to laugh again, louder this time, his massive body shaking with amusement. 1 hour! They give us 1 hour! He slapped his clawed hand against his throne. "Admiral Vex, destroy that ship. Now!" Admiral Vex hesitated. "Overlord, perhaps we should wait. Study the vessel. Its technology is irrelevant. It is one ship against 400. Fire!" The order went out. Across the Thex fleet, weapon systems activated. Energy beams lanced through space. Missiles streaked toward the Blackstar. Kinetic rounds tore through the void at incredible speed. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. All of them hit. The Blackstar vanished in a storm of fire and light. Explosions blossomed against its hull. The combined firepower of 400 warships poured into a single point, enough destructive force to shatter a moon. When the barrage ended, smoke and debris clouded the sensors. Crathon waited, a satisfied smile on his face. Then the smoke cleared. The Blackstar floated exactly where it had been before, undamaged, untouched. Its black hull showed no marks, no burns, no indication that anything had happened at all. Admiral Vex's voice was barely a whisper. "Impossible!" "Fire again!" Crathon roared. "All ships, fire again!" The fleet obeyed. Another barrage, even larger than the first. Every ship committed every weapon it had. The space around the Blackstar became a hurricane of destruction. It made no difference. The Blackstar absorbed everything. Its shields, if they were shields, did not flicker. Its position did not change. It simply sat there, dark and patient, waiting. "Overlord," Admiral Vex said, his voice trembling, "our weapons are having no effect. The energy readings from that ship are... The sensors cannot process them. They exceed all known parameters." Crathon stared at the view screen. For the first time in his life, he felt something cold settling in his chest. Not fear exactly. He did not know how to feel fear, but something close to it. "Continue firing," he ordered. "Rotate ships. Fresh weapons. Fresh angles. It must have a weakness." For the next 30 minutes, the Thex fleet attacked without pause. They tried every weapon, every tactic, every combination of firepower they could imagine. Ships positioned themselves to create crossfires. Specialists calculated vulnerable points that did not exist. Commanders screamed orders with increasing desperation. The Blackstar did not move. did not respond, did not even acknowledge that it was under attack. It simply waited, counting down the hour. On Sanctuary 7, refugees gathered around screens showing the battle above their world. They watched the Thex fleet pour fire into the small human ship. They saw the explosions. They saw the smoke clear. They saw the Blackstar still standing, still waiting. A child tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, what is that ship?" Her mother, a survivor of the Thex conquest of her homeworld, stared at the screen with tears running down her face. "Hope," she whispered. "I think it's hope." On the bridge of the Blackstar, Captain Cole watched the timer counting down. 47 minutes had passed. 13 remained. Around her, the crew monitored their stations with professional calm. Shields at 100%. Hull integrity perfect. All systems nominal. The ship had not even noticed the Thex attack. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Park said quietly, "do you think they'll stop?" Cole shook her head. "No. Look at them. They're not thinking anymore. They're reacting. Panic is setting in. In a few minutes, some of those captains will start questioning their orders. Then Crathun will do something to assert control. Execute a few officers probably. And the fleet will keep attacking until the timer runs out." "It seems like such a waste." "It is." Cole watched another barrage splash harmlessly against their shields. "But we can't make their choices for them. We can only offer the choice." The minutes crawled by. The Thex fleet continued its assault, growing more frantic as time passed. Some ships had exhausted their primary weapons and were resorting to secondary systems. Others had overheated their reactors and were struggling to maintain combat readiness. None of it mattered. With 5 minutes remaining, Captain Cole opened a channel to the Thex flagship. "Overlord Crathun, you have 5 minutes remaining. I urge you to reconsider your position. Withdraw now, and this ends peacefully. Continue your attack, and you will face consequences from which there is no recovery." Crathun's face appeared on screen. His expression was twisted with rage, his eyes burning with hatred. "You think you have won?" he snarled. "You think one ship, one trick, makes you powerful? The Thex Dominion has conquered 100 worlds. We have crushed civilizations that make your species look like insects. You are nothing." He pointed a clawed finger at the screen. "I will find your weakness, human. I will break your ship and mount your skull on my throne. And when I am done, I will burn every human world in the galaxy. You have my word." Cole nodded slowly. "Is that your final answer?" "It is my promise." "Very well." Cole turned to her communications officer. "End transmission." The screen went dark. 3 minutes. On the Conqueror's fury, Admiral Vex approached the Overlord's throne. "My lord," he said carefully, "perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. Regroup. Study this vessel before." Crathun moved with terrifying speed. His clawed hand closed around Vex's throat and lifted the Admiral off the ground. "Do you suggest we run, Admiral? Do you suggest the Thex Dominion flee from one enemy ship?" Vex choked, struggling to breathe. "My lord, I only—" Crathun's grip tightened. Something cracked. Admiral Vex went limp. The Overlord threw the body aside and turned to face his remaining officers. "Does anyone else wish to suggest retreat?" No one spoke. "Good." Crathun settled back into his throne. "Continue the attack, and bring me that human captain's head." 2 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. On the Blackstar's bridge, Captain Cole stood before the main view screen. The timer reached 0. She opened a final channel. "Overlord Crathun, your hour has expired. You have chosen to continue your attack. You have chosen to threaten human lives. You have made your decision." She paused. "Now witness ours." Cole turned to her crew. 12 people, chosen for this moment, trained for this moment, dreading this moment for years. "Weapons free," she said quietly. "No escape." Lieutenant Chen's hands moved across his console. Systems that had never been activated in combat came alive. Power levels spiked beyond anything the ship had ever shown. "All systems ready, Captain." Cole looked at the view screen one last time. 400 ships, thousands of weapons, an empire built on conquest and cruelty. "Engage." The Blackstar began to move. For the first time since arriving, it showed what it could do. It accelerated so fast that Thek's sensors lost track of it. One moment it was stationary. The next, it was among them, weaving through the fleet like a shadow with purpose. And then the weapons fired. Not destructive beams. Not explosive missiles. Something else entirely. Something the Theks had never seen. Something no species had ever developed. Something that made the impossible possible. The first Theks warship went dark. Every system aboard it failed simultaneously. Power, weapons, life support, communications. The crew found themselves floating in emergency lighting, their ship transformed into a drifting hulk. Then the second ship, the third, the fourth. The Blackstar moved through the Theks fleet like death itself, silent and unstoppable. Ships fell dark in its wake, disabled but not destroyed. Crews scrambled for emergency systems that did not respond. Captains screamed orders that no one could follow. In the first 10 minutes, 50 ships fell. In the next 10 minutes, another 100. The Theks fleet began to break formation, ships scattering in desperate attempts to escape. It did not help. The Blackstar was everywhere at once. Its weapons reaching across impossible distances, its speed making pursuit meaningless. There was no battle. There was only the harvest. And on the bridge of the Conqueror's fury, Overlord Krathen watched his empire crumble, one ship at a time, and finally learned what fear felt like. The battle, if it could be called a battle, lasted 4 hours. 4 hours for one ship to disable 400. The Blackstar moved through the Theks fleet with mechanical precision, never rushing, never pausing. Each target was engaged and neutralized in seconds. Energy pulses shut down power cores. Specialized fields collapsed shields before they could react. Boarding drones breached hulls and released non-lethal agents that rendered entire crews unconscious within minutes. Not a single Theks soldier died. Not a single human weapon was designed to kill. The galaxy had expected destruction. They had expected the human ship to burn through the Theks fleet with overwhelming firepower, leaving nothing but debris and corpses. Every species watching through long-range sensors waited for the explosions. The death, the terrible price of challenging humanity's hidden strength. Instead, they saw something they did not understand. Ship after ship went dark but remained intact. Hulls floated unbroken. Reactors cooled rather than detonated. Emergency beacons activated, confirming that crews were alive but incapacitated. The Theks Dominion's invasion fleet had not been destroyed. It had been harvested, gathered, collected like specimens for study. And when the last ship fell dark, when the Conqueror's fury itself drifted powerless through space, the Blackstar came to rest at the center of the silent fleet, surrounded by 400 monuments to its impossible victory. Captain Cole stood before the airlock, adjusting the collar of her uniform. Behind her, a small team of 6 crew members prepared their equipment: portable shield generators, communication devices, restraint systems. No weapons. They would not need weapons. The boarding drones have confirmed the flagship's crew is incapacitated, Lieutenant Commander Park reported. Emergency systems are functioning. Life support remains active. The Overlord and his command staff are on the bridge, unconscious like everyone else. Cole nodded. How long until they wake? Approximately 2 hours for most of the crew. The command staff received a stronger dose. They'll be out for at least 4. Good. That gives us time to prepare. Cole turned to face her team. Remember your training. We are not here to punish. We are not here to humiliate. We are here to deliver a message and offer a choice. Professional, controlled, clear. The team acknowledged her orders. Cole stepped into the airlock, opened the outer door. The interior of the Conqueror's Fury was everything the intelligence reports had described. Walls decorated with trophies from conquered worlds. Corridors lined with the symbols of subjugated species. A monument to empire built on the suffering of millions. Cole walked through the silent halls, her team following in formation. They passed Theks soldiers slumped at their posts, breathing steadily in their drug-induced sleep. They passed command centers and armories and storage bays filled with equipment meant for the conquest of Sanctuary 7. They passed a room filled with cages. Cole stopped. Inside the cages, dozens of beings from various species huddled together. Prisoners taken from previous conquests, kept alive for labor or entertainment or worse. They were awake, staring at the human team with expressions of confused hope. "Release them," Cole ordered. "Get them to the medical bay. Tell them they're safe." Two of her team members broke off to carry out the order. The rest continued toward the bridge. They found Overlord Krathun slumped on his throne, unconscious but breathing. His generals lay scattered around him, their massive bodies sprawled across the deck like fallen statues. Cole walked to the center of the bridge and looked at the Overlord. This was the being who had conquered 100 worlds, who had enslaved millions, who had laughed at the idea that anyone could stop him. Now he slept like a child, helpless and ignorant of the world changing around him. "Wake him," Cole said. Her medical officer administered the counteragent. Krathun stirred. His eyes flickered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening as consciousness returned. He saw the human standing before him, small, old, unarmed, and in that moment he remembered everything. He lunged, or tried to. His body refused to obey. His muscles had not yet recovered from the sedative. He managed only a weak twitch before collapsing back into his throne. "Easy," Cole said, her voice calm. "The effects will wear off completely in about an hour. Until then, I suggest you conserve your strength. We have much to discuss." Krathun's eyes burned with hatred. "I will kill you. I will tear you apart with my bare hands. I will—" "You will listen." Cole's voice did not rise, but something in her tone silenced the Overlord. "Your fleet has been captured. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. 400 vessels now drift powerless in space, their crews sleeping peacefully while humans secure them." She let that sink in. "Not destroyed," she continued. "Captured. Your soldiers are alive. Your ships are intact. We could have killed every one of you. We chose not to." Krathun stared at her. For the first time, confusion mixed with his rage. "Why?" Cole pulled a data tablet from her belt and activated it. A holographic display appeared, showing images and documents that made Krathun's officers stir uneasily. "The Thex Dominion has conquered 93 worlds over the past 30 years. Estimated civilian deaths, 47 million. Estimated forced laborers, over 200 million. War crimes documented, too numerous to list." The display shifted, showing specific incidents: mass executions, forced relocations, labor camps where thousands died from starvation and abuse. "Humanity has been watching you for 3 decades, Cole said. "We collected this evidence quietly, carefully, waiting for the day when it would be needed. That day has come." She stepped closer to Krathun, close enough that he could have grabbed her if his body had obeyed. "You have a choice, Overlord. 2 paths forward. One leads to life. The other leads to something worse than death." Krathun's jaw tightened. "Speak." "Path 1. You surrender yourself and your commanders to stand trial before a galactic tribunal. You confess your crimes. You cooperate fully with efforts to restore the world you have conquered. In exchange, your soldiers are returned to Thex space unharmed. Your species keeps its homeworld. The Dominion ends, but the Thex people survive." "And Path 2? Cole's expression did not change. "Path 2, you refuse. You continue to threaten humanity and the worlds under our protection. In that case, we will not simply capture your fleet. We will dismantle your civilization. Every military installation destroyed. Every weapon system eliminated. Every capability for aggression stripped away until the Thex are no longer a threat to anyone." She paused. "We will not kill your people. That is not our way. But we will reduce your species to a pre-spaceflight state and ensure you never threaten the galaxy again. Your children's children will grow up knowing that their ancestors were the ones who challenged humanity and lost everything." Krathun was silent for a long moment. His officers shifted nervously, none daring to speak. "You are bluffing," he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. One ship just defeated 400 of yours without suffering a scratch." Cole leaned closer. "Do you really want to find out what else we can do?" The Overlord looked at the holographic display, still showing evidence of his crimes. He looked at his unconscious generals. He looked at the small human woman who had walked onto his bridge without fear and delivered an ultimatum that no one in the galaxy had ever dared to give him. And he saw in her eyes something that terrified him more than any weapon: Certainty. She was not bluffing. She was not threatening. She was simply stating facts. If he refused, everything she described would happen. There would be no negotiation, no appeal, no second chance. The Theks worshipped strength. For 30 years, Krathen had believed his people were the strongest in the galaxy. Now he understood the truth. They were not even close. If I surrender, he said slowly, my people will live. Your people will live. Your homeworld will be left in peace. The soldiers of your fleet will be returned to their families. The only ones who will face judgment are those who gave orders to commit atrocities. Cole gestured at the officers around them. You and your commanders. Krathen closed his eyes. For a long moment, he did not move. Then slowly, he bowed his head. I surrender. Captain Cole stood before the Overlord as he spoke the words that ended the Theks Dominion's reign of terror. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep, weary relief. You made the right choice, she said quietly. Krathen looked up at her, his expression unreadable. Why? Why spare us? Your weapons could have destroyed my entire fleet in minutes. You could have killed every one of my soldiers and been celebrated as heroes. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then she answered, because we could have, because it would have been easy, because the galaxy expected us to respond with the same brutality you have shown. She met his eyes. We built the Blackstar hoping we would never use it. We spent 30 years praying that no one would force our hand. Today someone did. And still, we chose not to become what we could have. She turned away, looking out at the stars beyond the bridge windows. That is the difference between us, Overlord. You believe strength means destruction. We believe strength means choice. The power to destroy is meaningless compared to the power to decide not to. Krathen said nothing. Your trial will be fair, Cole continued. Your crimes are severe, but the tribunal will follow proper procedure. You will have the chance to speak in your defense. And when it is over, whatever sentence you receive, it will be justice, not revenge. She looked back at him one last time. I hope you understand someday why that matters. On Sanctuary 7, the refugees watched their screens in stunned silence. The Theks fleet drifted powerless above their world, not destroyed, captured. The beings who had conquered their homeworlds, killed their families, stolen their futures, were now prisoners themselves, and no one had died. The child who had asked about the human ship tugged at her mother's sleeve again. Mama, what happened? Her mother wiped tears from her eyes. The humans saved us, little one. But the scary soldiers, they're not hurt. No, they're alive. All of them. The child frowned, confused by a galaxy that had only ever taught her about violence and death. Why didn't the humans hurt them? Her mother pulled her close. Because they didn't have to. Because they were strong enough not to. Above them, the Blackstar floated among the silent fleet, its mission complete. Nothing had survived its path. Not the threat, not the Dominion's power, not the certainty that the strong could do whatever they wanted to the weak. But the people had survived, all of them. 3 months passed. The galaxy had changed. Everyone could feel it, even if they could not quite explain how. Something fundamental had shifted, not in the stars or the planets, but in the way people thought about power, about strength, about what was possible. The Theks Dominion was gone, not destroyed, but dissolved. Overlord Krathen and his command staff had been transported to a neutral station to face a tribunal of representatives from every species they had wronged. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time, the victims of Theks conquest spoke their stories where everyone could hear. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimonies were heartbreaking. And when the verdicts came down, no one disputed their justice. Krathen was sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote world, stripped of rank and title, forced to spend his remaining years reflecting on the suffering he had caused. His generals received similar sentences. They would live, but they would never hold power again. The Theks soldiers, as promised, were returned to their homeworld. They went back to families who had been told they would never return, to a society that had to learn how to exist without conquest. It would not be easy. A culture built on domination does not change overnight, but they had the chance to try. the 400 captured warships did not return to Thek's space. By agreement with the tribunal, they were converted into humanitarian vessels, cargo ships, medical transports, rescue cruisers. The same engines that had carried armies to conquest now carried food to famine zones and medicine to plague worlds. It was not forgiveness, it was transformation. The occupied worlds began the long process of healing. Refugees returned to homelands they had fled decades ago. Governments formed from the ashes of destroyed civilizations. Children who had grown up in camps and slums saw their parents' birth worlds for the first time. It would take generations to recover fully. Some scars would never heal, but for the first time in 30 years, there was hope. The Galactic Assembly convened for a special session 3 months after the battle. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every species, and more watched through broadcasts that reached billions of screens. Ambassador Yelena Vasquez walked to the central platform. She looked the same as always. Gray hair, black suit, calm expression. But the assembly no longer looked at her with dismissal or pity. Now they looked at her with something else. Not quite fear, not quite respect. Something in between. Fellow representatives, Vasquez began, I have been asked to address this assembly regarding recent events. I will do so as clearly as I can. She paused, gathering her thoughts. For 40 years, humanity has been a member of this assembly. For most of that time, we were ignored. We were considered a minor species, young, weak, unimportant. We did not contribute forces to joint operations. We did not participate in military alliances. We did not interfere in the conflicts that ravaged this galaxy. She looked around the vast hall. We were not weak. We were waiting. The assembly was silent. 60 years ago, humanity made first contact with alien civilizations. We discovered a galaxy where the strong preyed upon the weak, where conquest was considered natural, where millions suffered under the rule of empires built on violence. We could have tried to change things immediately. We could have revealed our capabilities and demanded reform. She shook her head slowly. We did not. We watched. We waited. We hoped that the galaxy would find its own path to peace. We hoped that organizations like this assembly would develop the courage to protect the innocent. We gave you 30 years to prove that collective action could work. Her voice hardened slightly. It did not work. The Thek's Dominion conquered 93 worlds while this assembly debated and issued condemnations. 47 million people died while you calculated the political risks of intervention. Children were born into slavery while you worried about trade agreements and diplomatic protocols. She let the words hang in the air. Humanity has a ship called the Blackstar. It was built as a last resort, a weapon so powerful that we hoped we would never need to use it. For 30 years, it waited in darkness while we prayed that someone else would stand up for the innocent. She spread her hands. No one did. So we acted. We stopped the Thek's invasion of Sanctuary 7. We captured their entire fleet without killing a single soldier. We ended their reign of terror and ensured that their crimes would face justice. A delegate from a species that had lost worlds to the Thek stood up. Why now? Why did you wait so long? Millions died while you watched. Vasquez met his eyes without flinching. Because we wanted to be certain. Certain that no other solution would work. Certain that intervention was truly necessary. And yes, certain that we could act without becoming the very thing we opposed. She turned to address the full assembly. Humanity did not act out of ambition or conquest. We did not demand territory or tribute. We asked for nothing except that the guilty face justice. When the battle was over, we withdrew. The Blackstar has returned to its resting place, where it will wait again, hopefully forever. She paused. Some of you are afraid of us now. I understand. You have seen what we can do. You wonder if we will use that power to dominate the galaxy, to impose our will on others, to become the next empire. Her voice softened. We will not. That is not who we are. We built the Blackstar hoping never to use it. We used it once, as gently as we could, and now it sleeps again, waiting for a day that we pray will never come. She straightened her shoulders. But let me be clear about one thing. The Blackstar exists. It will continue to exist. And if another Thek's dominion rises, if another empire begins to prey upon the innocent, we will act again. Not out of desire for power, but out of responsibility. Because someone must be willing to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. She looked directly at the delegates who had most loudly criticized human inaction over the years. You called us cowards for not intervening. You called us weak for refusing to fight. Now you know the truth. We were never weak. We were patient. We were waiting to see if strength was truly necessary. She shook her head sadly. It was necessary. I wish it had not been. But I do not regret our choice, and I will not apologize for it. The assembly erupted into noise, some shouting approval, others demanding answers, others simply processing what they had heard. Vasquez stood at the center of it all, calm and steady, waiting for the storm to pass. Finally, the speaker called for order. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, the assembly acknowledges humanity's statement. We will need time to consider its implications. But one question remains. Ask. You said the Blackstar waits for a day you pray will never come. But what if that day does come? What if another threat rises? How do we know humanity will act? Vasquez smiled slightly. You don't. That's the point. We are not your protectors. We are not your rulers. We are your neighbors. We will help when help is truly needed, not when it is convenient, not when it serves our interests, but when innocent lives hang in the balance and no one else will act. She turned to leave the platform. That is our promise, not to be your saviors, but to be the ones who stand in the darkness, watching, waiting, hoping we are never needed. And if we are needed, she looked back over her shoulder. We will be there. Captain Miriam Cole walked through the streets of Sanctuary 7's largest city. The reconstruction was well underway. New buildings rising, old wounds healing, life returning to normal. She wore civilian clothes, no uniform, no indication of who she was or what she had done. She wanted to see this place as it really was, not through the lens of ceremony and gratitude. Children played in parks, families shared meals at outdoor cafes, musicians performed on street corners, their songs carrying across the warm afternoon air. This was what survival looked like. Not monuments or speeches, but ordinary life continuing despite everything that had tried to end it. Cole stopped at a small memorial near the city center. It was simple, a wall with names etched into stone, listing every species that had found refuge on Sanctuary 7 and every world that the Thex had conquered. She read the names silently, honoring lives lost and worlds destroyed. A small voice interrupted her thoughts. Excuse me? Cole looked down. A child stood beside her, maybe 6 years old, with blue skin and large dark eyes. One of the refugee species, descended from survivors who had fled to this world decades ago. Are you the captain? The child asked. The captain of the scary ship? Cole knelt to meet the child's eyes. Who told you about that? Everyone talks about it. They say a ship came and stopped the bad soldiers. They say it was really scary and dark and nothing could hurt it. Cole considered her answer carefully. Yes, I'm the captain. The child's eyes widened. Were you scared? Yes, Cole admitted. I was scared, but sometimes you have to do scary things to help people. Why didn't you hurt the bad soldiers? My uncle says you could have hurt them really bad. Cole looked at the memorial wall, at the names of millions who had suffered under Thex rule. Then she looked back at the child. Because hurting them wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have just made more hurt, more sadness, more bad things. She smiled gently. The bad soldiers did terrible things, but they're still people. They have families too. Children like you, waiting for them to come home. The child frowned, working through this idea. So you let them go home? Eventually, yes, after they promised to stop doing bad things. And they did? They stopped? Cole nodded. They stopped. The child was quiet for a moment. Then she said, That was nice of you. To let them go home. Cole felt something tighten in her chest. Thank you. I hope so. The child's mother appeared, calling for her daughter. The girl waved goodbye and ran off, leaving Cole alone with the memorial. She stood there for a long time, reading the names, remembering the weight of her decisions. Then she walked back to the transport that would take her off-world. The Black Star waited in its hidden dock, cold and dark, sleeping until it was needed again. She hoped it would sleep forever. But if it didn't, if another threat arose, if another overlord decided to prey upon the weak, if the galaxy once again needed someone to stand in the darkness, Captain Miriam Cole and her crew would be ready. Not because they wanted to fight, because someone had to. Far away in the hollow moon that no map showed, the USS Blackstar floated in silence. Its systems were powered down, its corridors were empty, its weapons waited, patient and cold. The galaxy knew it existed now. They knew what it could do. They knew that humanity had built a promise and kept it waiting for 30 years. Nothing survived the Black Star's path. Not fleets, not empires. Not the cruel certainty that might makes right. But people survived. Hope survived. And that, in the end, was the only victory that mattered.